Yeah, we are. I'd like to welcome everyone to our regular council meeting. It's Tuesday, April the 28th, 2026, and I'm going to ask that we begin our regular council meeting by rising for a moment of silence. Thank you. Just before we move into the approval of the agenda, I will announce, in case anybody arrives, that tonight's meeting is being live streamed, and we'd like to welcome all of our viewing audience at home who have decided to join us. And if anyone does accompany us in the gallery, then we need to do the disclaimer that the meeting is being live streamed, and hopefully everybody will act accordingly. We've never had any issues in the past from within council with among members or with those in the gallery. So again, we welcome you here for tonight's meeting, and we will begin our meeting by asking for an approval of tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Deputy Warden Bazinet to approve tonight's agenda. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor McKinnon. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, nay. The agenda has been approved unanimously for tonight's council meeting. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest with respect to any motions or business that we're dealing with tonight? Hearing none, then we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes of the regular council meeting of March the 24th, 2026. Do we have a mover for those minutes that have been circulated and we've all had the opportunity to read? Moved by Councillor Nickerson. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Deputy Warden Bazinet. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, nay. That motion has been carried unanimously as well. And we also have minutes from a special council meeting we had on April the 21st last week. Do we have a mover for the adoption of those minutes? Moved by Councillor McKinnon. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Deputy Warden Bazinet. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, nay. That motion has also been carried unanimously. So this moves us into our reports for tonight. And I guess it starts with the report of the warden. Essentially, what I have to report is on April the 1st, I attended an audit committee meeting with respect to our municipal auditors to look at and to overlook or oversee, if you will, our financial affairs. And that's always a meaningful meeting. Fortunately, we don't have any outstanding concerns or problems with respect to the audit. And then on April the 14th and 21st, I attended the committee of the whole meeting with the rest of the members of council. And on April the 9th, I also attended the Joint Police Advisory Board meeting, where some good work is happening with respect to connecting with community and working together as a board to facilitate public engagement with the RCMP. And of course, that meeting I always find meaningful. It's under the capable chairwomanship of Councillor McKinnon, and it's always a good discussion that happens there. We've got some solid community members on that committee. And on April the 21st, of course, there was a special council meeting that I also attend with the rest of the members that are present. And that's essentially all I have to report for the month of April. Any questions? Hearing none, then we'll move on, and I'll start over here to the left with Deputy Warden Bazinet and go to Councillor McKinnon and Councillor Jekyll, and I think Councillor Nickerson has the report coming out of committee as a whole for tonight. So Deputy Warden Bazinet, take it away.
Thank you. So on April 20th, I attended a leadership meeting of the 5 Shelburne County units that was held here. Our MLA, Nolan Young, attended and fielded a variety of questions regarding issues facing the county. The museum complex funding was addressed, as was the reality of our fragile water security given ongoing drought conditions down in this area. It became quite clear, interestingly, that the other units were not nearly as far ahead in dealing with water shortages as we are here, which was kind of an interesting realization both for us and for them, I think. Because Nolan's portfolio also includes workforce development, we discussed at length the need for to resurrect course programming and creative ideas in the trades, such as plumbing, electrical, and carpentry through NSCC, as well as programming for agricultural farm technicians who are needed to shore up issues related to food sovereignty, both locally and provincially. On April 21st, I met with Lucinda Montezamber to discuss ongoing planning and organizing in the Shelburne and Yarmouth counties regarding deeply affordable housing. She provided an update on efforts to coordinate the various agencies attempting to address the needs of the under and unhoused in Shelburne County. On April 22nd, I, along with Susie Paley-Atwood, visited Betty Lovett at her home in Port Latour and presented her with her certificate from the municipality for being 103 years old, as well as some nifty swag from the lobster capital. That was fun. On April 24th, I attended the Tri-County Youth Summit that was held at the Burge campus at NECC in Yarmouth. Over 100 youth were there. It was quite the event from across the Tri-Counties. They were there to participate in sort of communicating what they felt as their needs moving forward, given a lot of the socioeconomic pressures this cohort will be experiencing. It was interesting. Tomorrow through Friday, I'll be attending the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities Spring Conference in Yarmouth, where I'm hopeful we'll have some meaningful discussion around the needs of Nova Scotia residents. And lastly, I attended both meetings of the Committee of the Whole and the special meeting attached to one of them. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Warden Mezzanine. Yeah. Glad you got to the youth summit. I was a death in the community that prevented me from being able to be there, but I had signed up. I hope it was a meaningful time.
Yeah, there were quite a few elected officials there, so I was pleased to see that because it's not often you see that kind of engagement. So it was good.
Our very own Josie Hetfield was probably there doing or coordinating a lot of that event, right? So kudos to her. Yeah, she's quite a community leader, or across the Tri-County.
Oh, Kendra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
And
he
I
was
will
there.
turn it over to Councillor McKinnon for your report.
It's brief
That's okay. Brief is
and
good.
it's brief.
Brief is good.
Yeah, brief is, well, it was good actually. I did have an opportunity. I did attend, of course, the police advisory. There is a survey out there. I just want to kind of plug that we're asking community members to fill out their top 3 priorities for what they think the priorities are for RCMP, and that will help us facilitate hopefully a community engagement session around that in the fall and help hopefully have some influence on the strategic planning of the RCMP next year. So I see some feedback was how do you just pick 3, right? And I think that's just from not also understanding that strategic planning, you can't pick all. You can, you pick your highest priorities. So I hope that lots of people fill that out. I don't know how's it.
I did I don't have a recent number.
Okay.
Unfortunately. Sorry.
So is that online for a certain amount of time, or?
I think we had it until the end of May.
End of May. Okay. So there's that. I met with Adam Dolliver and Davey Hartley on a newcomers event happening in Shelburne on May 30th at the Shelburne High School. They're hoping to plan to have one here in the coming months in Barrington. It was very well attended. They did a potluck last year. It was very well attended at the Shelburne Fire Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to host one out in the Barrington area. So hopefully we can get that underway. I attended both Committee of the Whole sessions, and that is pretty much it in terms of official meetings as a counselor. Oh, no, I met with Chris, with a constituent around rezoning of land.
Okay. Nothing brief about that. It sounds pretty substantive to me. Councillor Jekyll, you're up.
Thank you. I don't have much to report either. I will attend all the Committee of the Whole meeting, and I attend the Audit Committee meeting. And just one thing, so tomorrow is gonna have the volunteer banquet. I wanna thanks all the volunteers for the work that they do all year round. I know we have quite a few volunteers in our municipality, and it's the backbone for this municipality to keep going. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jekyll, and Councillor Nickerson, if you would give us a report of your activities, and you can segue right into the report from the committee of the whole.
Yeah, as long as I can read it I got an eyelash in my eye and I can't get it out.
Got a piece of chalk in your eye,
Man,
almost like
piece
grade
of chalk,
5,
yeah,
grade 5 all over again.
yeah. So I attended the committee of the holes, and also the special council meeting. I met with a couple guys on, one guy actually, and ran into another concerning sewage issues. I think could be something coming forward with that. So, also, I would like to thank the firefighters, all the departments. That fire was a half a mile from my house. I wasn't a happy camp. Anyway, I would like to thank them, and I would like to really thank the one firefighter that was there at 6:30 in the morning checking it out again to see if it didn't restart. So he knows who he is, and I certainly appreciate that. You don't sleep well knowing that there was a fire, and I was down there at 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock to see if I could see any smoke, and so I didn't sleep at all. But again, thanks to all 3 fire departments, they all responded and they put it out in a timely manner. So, and that is it. I'll move on to report from committee of the whole. Just gonna hold up here. Committee of the whole meeting on April 14th, Woolen Mill and Museum Complex funding closure. It is recommended council that be it resolved, the municipality of the district, the municipality direct staff to explore and report back on creative and collaborative options to bridge the identified funding gap that will result in the likely closure of the Woolen Mill and Museum Complex. And further be it resolved that the staff engage with relevant stakeholders, including the Museum Complex board and staff, community groups, and regional partners to identify viable short and long-term solutions. And further be it resolved that a report outlining options, costs, risk, and recommendation be brought back to council by a date to be determined.
Okay, do we have a mover for this motion?
Point of order.
Okay,
I, as the person who submitted
Yeah.
this motion, my plan is to suggest that we defer any action on this, given that there's been movement on the province's part to
okay,
significantly help with the funding for this. So I don't want to waste anybody's
okay.
time, or not I waste, but I don't want anybody to waste their time on something that may end up getting resolved largely on its own. So I don't know
Okay.
whether we have to vote on this and then I mention that, or if we
No.
can just dispense with it.
Actually, it hasn't been moved or seconded, so what you can do is make a motion that we defer this matter, or to
To a later date.
Yeah.
a later date.
At some,
I mean, you could make a motion, just make it official, but
Okay.
it's not even a motion.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's not
so-
made a motion yet, so if you want, if we leave it here, then it may not come back. But if you defer it, then it can come back at a later time because it's been deferred, right? And so it's up to you. If you think it's not necessary to act on it, then go ahead, Councillor Jackal.
I mean, we can always bring them back, but I think if the province is already moving on it, I don't think we should keep it on the book or hold it. I think if things went the bad ways, that we can bring back to the table. I mean, we have no problem with that. And different way in different situation. It's just if the province is stepping up to the plate, that's what we're looking for, to see the province step up to the plate. And now they are doing that. And I heard the same things from some people that said it is something is going on, that I think they're gonna get something. So
Okay.
I think we should just
Okay.
let it go, and or whatever. What's the best way? What's the easy way for the staff to take it off the book so that way, if something happens in the future, we can bring it back.
Thank you.
If we moved it and seconded it, then you would have to table it because that's just the rules of order, but you
Right.
can make a motion to defer this matter
Okay,
and then it can still come back.
all right.
No problem.
I would like to defer the matter.
Okay, it's been moved that we defer this matter to a future committee of the whole meeting pending the outcome of how the province deals with it.
Yeah,
Do we
you
have a
can-
seconder for that motion?
You can word it in that way if
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
you want to.
You have a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councilor Nicholson. So basically what we're deferring this matter to a future committee of the whole meeting, if necessary, based on staff discretion. We have a seconder already for that motion. Any further discussion on it? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, nay. Okay, so that will just be a motion that's deferred, which means, or a motion to defer this matter, not the motion itself. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Councilor Nicholson.
Terms of reference, Joint Service Board Exploration Committee. It is recommended to council to accept the terms of reference for the Joint Service Board Exploration Committee as presented.
Do we have a mover for this motion?
So moved.
Moved by Deputy Warden Bazinet. Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Councilor McKinnon. Any further discussion?
Question.
Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, nay. That motion is carried unanimously.
2026-27 operating budget second draft. It is recommended council approve the 2000. Aren't we gonna do that later?
Yeah, you can, yeah, this is a recommendation that's kind of followed up later on in the agenda. So if you wanted to wait to do all of the motions separately, probably best to do that.
You want to do that
Yeah.
instead of reading this? Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll move on to the April 21st meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
committee of the whole council meeting, April 21st, 2026. Southwest Blast FC draft MOU. It is recommended council to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Southwest Blast FC as presented.
Okay, do we have a mover for that motion? Moved by Councilor McKinnon, a seconder, seconded by Councilor Nicholson. This motion for the viewing audience is essentially a memorandum of understanding between the municipality of Barrington and the Southwest Blast, which is a soccer entity or organization, and it has to do with the Richard Swain field, on matters of mutual working together to make sure the field is up to snuff and up to standards that will be good for both the municipality and the user group of that facility. Any further discussion on the motion? Questions being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, nay. The motion's been carried unanimously, and that ends our reports from the committee of the whole and takes us into our staff report. I'll turn it over to our CAO to offer up staff report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warren. So first, budget has obviously been front and center for the last couple of months, and it was no different during the month of April. And the results of those conversations and meetings and work is on the agenda. Was on later on in the agenda tonight. The recreation center is obviously of much interest to the public and to yourselves and staff as well for starting the transition to moving in there. So last week, staff was able to move themselves and start to install equipment and place things where they're going to be put. There was an issue with the connection of the existing fire alarm system to the new fire alarm system. It's a insanely complicated system and process, and it's a life safety system. So you can't really, go around corners or change anything. You have to follow everything as it should. So they had to resolve, I think it was maybe 3 or 4 deficiencies on the old fire alarm system to be able to verify the entire system as it connected. So we're not expecting that to delay anything. It's just it was an unexpected step that they had to take before doing the verification. But nonetheless, the staff was in there last week. We kept installing, putting things and getting set up in there, and then we're looking to do some controlled usage starting next week with a soft opening, hopefully towards the end of the week or the beginning of the following week, and then that can kind of continue on. The main thing is getting that full occupancy. So the controlled usage will happen next week, and by that we mean like accompanied usage or very short targeted usage, like using one room by one group asking them how it went, testing out the systems, the lights and the bathrooms, all of that stuff instead of opening the doors wide open. Then once we get limited occupancy, we can have a soft opening where the more people at once can use it, and then we turn into full occupancy in the grand opening. But yeah, that starts the controlled usage starts next week.
Are we having ribbon cutting?
Grand opening, yeah, that's when that'll be. We have a big set of scissors, and yeah, everyone will have to have their shot at cutting the ribbon. On April 1st, our C&D site moved over to their summer operating hours. So that is Monday to Friday, 8 to 4, and then every Saturday, 8 a.m. to noon. So instead of every second Saturday in the winter, it moves over to that. As Councillor McKinnon mentioned, we do have the survey for the local policing priorities. And I did check, and there's 26 responses so far. So it's been out for a couple of weeks. That's fairly low, but it sometimes takes a while to get traction. And we'll be kind of pushing that out and promoting it as much as we can. And you can share it within your networks as well. The volunteer banquet, as Councillor El Jackal mentioned, is tomorrow night at the curling rink. So we're really excited to be able to recognize the volunteers in our community. And that's the local volunteer banquet or recognition event. So there is the provincial event that happens in September, and you will get those nominations probably in the summertime or maybe a bit before to make your decision on who the municipal representative will be to that event in the provincial event. And there are different categories. We're going to explain them at the banquet as well, but I'll send out an email just so you're aware that there are different categories instead of just a municipal rep. There's like, I think maybe a family representative, like provincially, and then a youth representative. So those are other opportunities for our volunteers to be recognized. Interim tax bills were issued at the beginning of April. The due dates for those are May 15th. It's May 15th. The ice season in the arena of the Recplex wrapped up on April 12th. We had a really busy, strong season this year. I associated it a little bit to the Mariner Center being offline towards the end of the ice season because of their renovations in Arena 1. So it created kind of a need in the general region for ice time, especially now that spring hockey has grown quite a bit. And we've already received some pretty substantial requests for spring of 2027. So we're actually looking, because of that demand, to extending the ice season as much as we can. We're gonna tap out there at some point. We can't be open in July. Like our arena is just not built for that. But we're now, towards the end of April, and there might be, we haven't looked into this, but if there is an appetite for it, there might be some, different types of equipment that we could install to extend it even more. But that's kind of looking into the future. But nonetheless, it's exciting because obviously we'd like for it to be used, and having the Recplex now almost, fully usable, and that synergy between the recreation center and the arena, I think is going to be really beneficial and attractive to groups to use. So with this summer season, we move kind of into the maintenance of fields and parks and rest stop maintenance and all of that. So Public Works is busy there. In terms of in the fire services department, we were finally excited to see the announcement, or I guess the approval for us to announce that we were successful in getting a regional emergency service provider fund grant to help cover or help substantially cover the cost of a structural protection. So that's a trailer with a lot of tons of kind of sprinklers and equipment to be able to protect properties or structures during wildfires. So that was a $200,000 grant from the province, and each of our 3 fire departments invested $10,000 towards that. So there was no municipal, per se, dollars invested in there, but we did help, with the application. We did help coordinate with the supplier. We will likely look at putting that as part of our kind of insurance portfolio, just because it's a jointly owned asset amongst the 3 fire departments. But nonetheless, it's really nice when, we're really fortunate to have 3 fire departments that work very closely together, that meet regularly, and then, are at a point in their work, to look at regional assets and things that really benefit the entire municipality and sharing those. And there's obviously a lot of training that is required for equipment like that. And it is a kind of a commitment of financially into the future, but it's it's a great asset, great piece of equipment for us to have. So we're really, really lucky for that. Looking into the future, or I guess in the upcoming initiatives, summertime is fast approaching, so that's when our recreation department gets in full swing. I do want to mention that the new building code came into effect April 1st. I know that doesn't affect, it isn't something that you as counselors or staff kind of think about a lot, but it is a very important document and code, and obviously our development office and our inspection office is something they use on a day-to-day basis. And I did want to mention it because it is new and there are some substantial changes being made now and into the, in phases. So if there are any contractors, developers, carpenters out there, that you know of, or that might have questions, our development office is the best place to start. And they might not be able to answer all of the questions, but yeah, it's important for them to be well aware of those changes to the building code. And with that, I submit my report.
Any questions for our CAO with respect to the report that's been rendered?
I actually have a question. When you're talking about leaving the ice in,
Yeah.
potentially could be longer than
Yeah.
what, this year, I know that the lag time between the ice going out and the batting cages
Yeah.
going up
Yeah.
was a bit of a little conflict
Yeah.
there. And so my ask is, in the Recplex, would that be a space that they could put something like that, or is it not big
Batting
enough?
cages.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've kind of come to the point that it's not conducive. The arena, the rink area is not conducive to having batting cages. We're not saying that we're going to take them out and never put them again. That's not what I'm saying.
Mhm.
Just we have to really think of a better way to provide, the
Mhm.
service of the batting cages, whether it's in the multi-purpose room for a certain period of time or another area, another location that we haven't thought of yet. But with the increased usage of the rink and the increased usage of the batting cages and the desire for them, it's kind of like they're butting heads, right? And
Right.
I think there's a better way to do that. Before, we took out the ice a lot earlier, like March break, so
Mhm.
a whole really month
Mhm.
earlier, and the batting cages weren't used as much as they were.
Mhm.
Year round sports is becoming more, prevalent in our area, whether it's ball during the whole year
Yeah.
or hockey or whatever. But that's, I guess, the outlook or the thoughts on that. Yeah, definitely don't want to push one out for the
Mhm.
other, or vice versa. If that answers your question. So,
Well, I'm hoping it answers other people's questions.
oh, okay. Hope that answers that question. And I mean, they can always, reach out to the
Yeah.
rec department or me or anyone, because sometimes, we're not fully aware of,
Mhm.
the wants and needs, and
Mhm.
just hearing about it is at least making us aware. It's good.
Okay, any further questions for our CAO on this matter of the staff report? Hearing none, we'll transition into new or other business, and the first item on our agenda is the first reading of the REMO bylaw. We essentially went over this in committee of the whole, and it's been covered quite extensively. It's not something that we've sprung onto an agenda overnight or anything like that. So I guess what we would do is just announce this is first reading.
You would make you would give first reading to the bylaw,
Yeah.
and then that would have that would set up the second reading, but between that time we would have to advertise it.
Any objections into first reading? We don't need a motion for this, right? First reading.
I think the motion is to give first
Okay,
reading. I think
okay.
that's the proper
I'll
way to do it,
entertain
yeah.
a motion to that effect.
I'll move.
Moved by Deputy Warden Bazzani. Do we have a second there? Seconded by Councilor Nickerson, that this constitute or that first reading be entered into. Any further discussion? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, nay. That motion has been carried unanimously. That moves us into the next item on the agenda, which is community pastures, which pertains to the sound presentation or good presentation, thorough presentation that was rendered to us last week by Matt. And we're looking for a motion for this. There's actually a suggested motion at the end of the presentation. So at this time, we would entertain a course of action on the community pastures presentation that was rendered to us last week.
I'll move that are we going to use that language here? We like that language. To recommend that staff, that we explore opportunities regarding community pastures with the Yarmouth Shelburne Federation of Agriculture.
Do we have a seconder for this motion? Seconded by Councillor Nicholson. Any further discussion?
Just, I know, our CEO has sent out some potential properties and stuff, so
Mhm.
is it the intent that the staff just go with this and throw the pieces of property at them? I prefer it that way. I don't think we need to get in the middle of choosing properties. I think if they're used for something else, obviously you can't use them in somewhere unidentifiable and somewhere, and I'm sure there's something there that. So is that's the intent, is just to move forward with staff and get it done, right?
I think so. I guess my question would be that from what I gathered from the presentation, that there's no, you know, there's no ownership being surrendered of these municipal properties, right? So ownership's not being surrendered, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so correct. So I think we would go, if you look at in the presentation, there was a slide around moving forward.
Yeah.
And it included kind of 5 or 6 steps. One was to identify the properties. Well, we've already done that. And that was sort of, there was some interest in just understanding what properties might even be available. So we already did that. And then the municipality gave permission to walk on the properties, the federation evaluating the properties, the potential properties are identified, and then enter into a lease agreement. So those 3 steps before entering into a lease agreement, this motion I feel like would give me the correction authority to do that. Then when they choose a property, and then we would draft up a lease, that would come to you for approval.
That's what I was wondering,
Yeah.
because I think it's in the public interest. I mean, we can sit around the table and say, yeah, let staff go ahead and work out some sort of negotiation or deal, but ultimately we're dealing with land that's owned by the residents of the municipality of Barrington. So I think in terms of it would seem to me like a pretty important responsibility that council retain that position of any kind of final decision that's made to enter into a lease, and that we would have some kind of oversight over what those properties are. We do know we have like community health center projects on the go. There may be other things that come to light in between now and June. And I think if we just kind of give that away and say, go do whatever you want to do without council's interference, that doesn't seem prudent to me. So I'm happy with what's been said, that, when the final lease will come back for council's perusal, because I think we not only have that, it's not the authority I'm after here, but I'm after the responsibility that's ours to make sure that we provide that kind of oversight. Deputy Warden Bazinet.
Yeah, just to be clear that the Yarmouth Shelburne Federation folks would only be walking properties that the municipality deems suitable. So any land connected to the possible clinic site would not be offered for them to walk. So in the end, would only be land that the staff decides, all right, this might be a suitable land. Go take a look at it, and they may walk away from it and say, no, not suitable.
Yeah.
So
Good
in
sage
the
point.
end,
It'll be back and forth.
Yeah.
In that.
Sage point, and I didn't envision that they would be interested in that land. I think it was more of a hypothetical that if there was a parcel of land that council had, or even residents had some sort of concern about. But I think, so in this case, like if we were selling municipal land, then we would probably have to have some sort of a public hearing. But in the case of a lease, we're not surrendering title, and it'll expedite, and that's a good thing actually, that it will expedite the use of it for this purpose. And do we know at this point what length of term the lease that they might be looking for? Is that something to be negotiated between staff and the entity?
unless it's in the present.
I don't think it was. Sorry.
Yeah, let them choose the land first, and we'll see. Then
Yeah,
they're
no.
gonna come back to us in the end. I mean, then we can
Yeah.
make that decision ourselves. I mean, we're not gonna.
Yeah, no, the
No.
question, I'm just floating the question out because when it comes back, like, I mean, if there is a public audience tonight, it's not a bad question to ask. What kind of length of term are we looking for the lease? So I'm not trying to jump ahead, but I am interested in, us being as open and transparent about whatever we're doing if possible. So It's
I
enough.
mean, it will be a lot of more questions when I come to the table
Sure.
after when we start to listen, because we want to make sure that no other environment issue afterward and all that stuff. And I want to make sure that that land is come back
Yeah.
safe and sound for the municipality too, for the taxpayer. So
Point well taken.
Yeah.
Thank you for your caution. Question on the motion. Any further discussion I should ask? Hearing none. Questions being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, nay. The motion's been carried unanimously. So we move into the residential resource and commercial tax rates. I'll turn it over to our finance. I think Leah Dion is probably going to join us, our director of finance at the table. Go ahead, Mr. Proctor.
She will. And thank you, Mr. Warren. So before you dive into all of the motions regarding the budget, the 26-27 budget, I usually do a presentation just to kind of summarize it and make it easier for ourselves to follow, but also those at home and in the audience to follow. So that's how I'll approach it again tonight. It'll include all of the information that's on the agenda. So it's simply just reformatted in a different way or presented in a different way. All the numbers and the information is the same. And as our warden mentioned, Leah Dion, who puts a lot of work every year in putting this together and making sure it all makes sense and coordinating everyone and everything, is here with us tonight, so she can fill in any gaps or questions that you might have. So for you here, I did send you the copy of the presentation that you can follow along. For those at home, I've just kind of transitioned the screen from our camera to the presentation itself. So as I'm going through it, those at home will be able to follow. Hopefully, anyway, because this is the first time trying that. So as mentioned, this is our presentation following the months of budget deliberations and meetings that you've had on our 2026-2027 municipal budgets. As I mentioned, every year, the budget is one of the most important documents that we develop every year. It kind of has the game plan or the operational financial plan over the next 12 months. And this doesn't happen overnight. We start developing and planning for the municipal budget roughly, November, December before the fiscal year. And that includes, collecting data, reviewing our financial reports, getting, public input if needed, looking at our strategic initiatives, reviewing our services, and kind of planning for the future. The process that we follow, which we followed for the last number of years, always starts with director submissions. So our directors, obviously, who are managing each of our departments, have kind of their budgets every year, and they have a really in-depth understanding about what has happened over the year and what may need to happen, or what we may need to invest in the next fiscal year and afterwards. So they always submit kind of the budgets for their departments. That's the first step. And then Leah and I, or the CEO and the director of finance, review those budgets, and that's the time that we ask questions, ask for follow-up information, and really make sure that those budgets are as accurate and complete as possible. In February, so once we go through those director submissions and the review of those in December, January, in February is when we start to have conversations with council. So the first one is always around the capital planning, so capital projects. If you remember, we brought a long list of capital projects, and that was the time we asked you, are there any here that are not of interest or that are missing or that you have more questions on? And that really helps develop the capital plan, because the capital projects are our largest projects. They're in terms of kind of time and effort and money, so they have a big impact on our operating budget. So it's important to have those conversations before to get an understanding of what impacts they might have on putting together the operating budget. So throughout the month of February, we have those, and we continue to have kind of conversations, Leah and I, around the budget and start putting together that first draft, because in March, usually the beginning of March, that first Saturday in March, is when we have our day-long budget meeting with yourselves to present the first draft. And that's really the first kind of step in starting to build the operating budget for the next fiscal year. In the month of March and April, you review that first draft, you make adjustments, there are revisions to the draft, and in different versions, and then we come to April, usually by the end of April, where we present the budget for approval. And then after that, there's obviously the publishing of budget highlights documents and press releases, and the budgets on our website, and any financial reporting that needs to happen.
Mhm.
So a couple of metrics or data that I always like to mention during my presentation. First is around uniform assessment. So this is just kind of a snapshot of the last 10 years. And if you look at the graph, you see that there's a gradual increase in the uniform assessment. So the assessment of the municipality, the entire assessment. That's obviously a positive trend. We want to see that because we operate on property taxes, and property taxes are based on the assessments of properties in our municipality. So we always pay attention to that, and it sort of is in tandem with our property tax rates, because that's how we calculate what revenue we're going to generate throughout the year. If you look at the years 23, 24, and fiscal 24, 25, you'll see a higher kind of incline there. So those were during the COVID years when real estate sales, skyrocketed and assessments went up. Compared to last year, this year we had a $21.3 million increase in uniform assessment. That's still quite substantial, but it's only about 50% what we saw in the prior 2 years. So I think we're starting to get back to kind of a more normal increase in uniform assessment. Just to give a quick kind of stat, over the last 4 years, uniform assessment increased by 120 million, so about 25%. So it's quite a bit in the last 4 years, but a lot of that was during those 2 fiscal years. And I do want to take this opportunity to remind yourselves and the public that we do not assess properties. That's Property Valuation Services Corporation. So they assess the properties, they decide how much they're worth, and then we tax according to that. In assessments, there's a number of factors that go into determining that. But if anyone has any questions on the assessment of their properties, PVSC is the best place to go. The next data set that I like to present is around just our property tax rates, just to give a kind of an overview of what they've been doing over the last number of years. And there in the presentation, the graph is over a 10-year period. So in general, our municipal property tax rates have been kind of not the same. They've increased slightly, but not substantially, and we're very much in line with our neighboring municipal units and municipalities similar to ours in the province. And our financial indicator around the tax burden on our residents is green. It's within the threshold of the bottom threshold. Nonetheless, obviously it's a very, very important kind of decision to make every year when you start looking at the budget. Last year we did increase it by 3 cents for the residential tax rate, so $1.07 to $1.10, and then the commercial rate increased by 5 cents from $2.56 to $2.61. So for this year, the rates that the budget is based on are pretty much the same as last year. So first, the residential rate is being presented to remain the same at $1.10 per $100 of assessment. The commercial rate is the same at $2.61 per $100 of assessment. The fire rates are the same, so they vary depending on the fire district, but they're between 11.3 and 12.2 cents per $100 of assessment. And there is also the 1.5 cent per $100 assessment for the capital upgrades. So that's kind of a 1.5 cent charge to all residents of the municipality. It all goes in one pot, is split equally amongst the 3 departments and used solely for capital purchases, equipment or gear. And then we have our wastewater rate, our sewer rates. Those did increase by $22 from $375 to $397. And that was based on an exercise that Leah did at your request of kind of determining what is the operating costs of the sewer of our sewer systems, which we can figure that out, but what is the corresponding rate that would need to be charged to cover those costs. So that's what where that 397 comes from. So now I'll go into the operating budget. And the operating budget is where our day-to-day operations are. So what it takes to run the municipality and provide the services that we provide. We are forced by the province to present and to approve a balanced budget. So we cannot budget for a deficit, nor can we budget for a surplus. Now, in some cases, you can budget to transfer money to reserves for like a future project that's allowed, but you can't just like leave, $200,000 just there as a surplus. We have to approve and present and approve a balanced budget. So I'll start by giving a overview of the revenue side of the budget, and what I'm presenting in the presentation and what is attached to the agenda is what we call the summary. So it's the high level summary. So the one pager for revenues and one page for expenses. There is a breakdown document, and then there's even a general ledger detailed document that has all of the line items in it. Those are always available to the public and to yourselves, and they are put on our website. So on the website, we have our capital budget, the breakdown of our municipal operating budget, and a budget highlights document. That document is really meant to try and kind of summarize what those Excel spreadsheets are and put like a qualitative description on some of the numbers. So those will be posted if the budget is approved. Those will be published on our website in probably before the end of the week. So in the revenues, I want to mention that the actuals are up to January. So if you were the public notices that the actuals of 2025-26 aren't anywhere near or aren't exactly what the 25-26 budget were. Now, sometimes the actuals and budget aren't completely identical, but in some cases it's just because there were still 2 months left of the fiscal year. So there were still some expenses or revenues to come in potentially. So first, so how I present it in here is that there are the actuals of the previous fiscal year, I guess now, the budget of that fiscal year, and then our budget for the fiscal year we're in now, or what would have been the upcoming fiscal year. So the 26-27 budget is on the far right side column. So the first category that we have, or grouping, is taxation. That is self-explanatory for the most part. It's the taxes that we charge, the rates, the D-transfer tax, and the grants in lieu. Or no, that's in a separate category, sorry. So this year, the budget for that is 9.938 million. And that is compared to 9.466 million. So that is directly related or directly due to the increase in assessment. There's no property tax rate increases. So that's why there's an increase there. And there was a $25,000, I think, increase in the D-transfer tax. Did we budget for 50? 25. Yeah. So those would be those two reasons would be why the budget is slightly higher this year in revenues. Then we have grants in lieu. So grants in lieu are payments that we receive for properties that are exempt from our property taxes. And those are often properties that are owned by the province or the federal government or crown corporations. So like Nova Scotia Power doesn't pay property taxes, but they give us a grant in lieu of not paying property taxes. I don't know the calculation, and it'd probably be way too boring and long to write now, but if anyone is interested in learning how that number gets calculated, we can provide that to you. There is an increase there of about 10%, and that's due to just more properties receiving grants for more properties. Services to other governments. So this includes services we provide to the towns of Clark's Harbor. It includes any joint services that we have. So for example, REMO, Regional Emergency Management Organization, senior services or senior safety. Those all go into there, and those are revenues that we either generate from selling the service or we are responsible for managing the service and we get funds from the other units, but then there's like an offsetting expense later on. So I'll give you an example of that at that point, but that's practically the same as last year. In terms of sale of service, so there you will see a 47% increase. And most, if not all of it, is attributed to the circular materials contract, so the recycling contract that we now get compensated for collecting and disposing of recyclables. And there are some additional revenues that we anticipate generating from the Recplex, like from the recreation center and arena and such. So that's why there's a 47% increase there. In other revenue, so this could be things like revenue generated from licenses, permits, rentals, interest on our investments, interest on overdue taxes. You'll see there that there's a 38% decrease. Now, the reason for that is because in there would be revenues that the fire services would use to pay for, a new piece of equipment or an extension to a fire hall. So last year there was a purchase, I think it was the boat on the Barrington, and there might have been another piece of equipment. So that like injects more funds into the revenues of that line item to be able to pay for those costs because it comes from the fire departments. This year there's less or not as many capital or purchases being planned by the departments, so that revenue is lower. But then there's obviously a corresponding expense that wouldn't be as high because we wouldn't be paying for that. There also is $60,000 less in revenues budgeted this year than compared to last year for the revenue from our wind turbine because it is not operating and we don't plan for it to be operating in the next fiscal year. If by some miracle it does start operating and generating revenue, that'll just be a bonus to us. But we felt it was more prudent to budget for no revenue generated from the wind turbine. So that's the reason for the 38% decrease there. And then the remaining three items in the revenues section are unconditional transfers, which are grants that we can use kind of for whatever we want. Like what do they call it now? The financial capacity grant, municipal financial capacity grant comes from the province. It used to be called equalization. It's sort of funds we get from the province to use how we see fit. So that's practically the same as last year. And then conditional transfers is grants that we receive, like project specific grants. Gas tax we have to use for certain purposes. That's where we have to put it. And then other transfers are things like transfers to our reserves or loans. Those two second numbers are much lower than last year, but it's directly related to the recreation center. So we're obviously pretty well complete the rec center, so we've substantially paid for it. So the remainders of those are the rec center, and then there are some revenues that will come in to pay for the next fiscal year's capital projects too. And so that rounds out the revenues side of the budget, and the total revenues budgeted for this year are $15,382,088. I'm going to stop there in case there are any questions or comments or anything.
Do we have any questions or comments at this point in time?
On that line, taxation.
Yep.
So that's what we collect from we collect $9 million from residents? No.
So there would be, I mean, there are a variety of like things that we charge there. So there's property taxes, commercial taxes, there's transfer tax. So that's a big chunk of it too. And then there's like sewer rates and such, but that's where all of the taxation would be.
Man, that has increased drastically over the years.
Yeah, for taxes, it's 8.2 million, and then there's fire area rates in there too. And then there are like the sewers and the transfer tax. So that rounds out to 9.38.
So the difference between the 9.7 million and the 9.4 million is basically transfer.
Yep.
For the most part.
Like which were actuals in budget for last year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm trying to
No, I got it.
recall when I first started 8 years ago, it definitely probably wasn't even in the 8 million range. But like I mentioned, assessments have gone up. Uniform assessment 120 million. So you take that and yeah, it makes a big difference.
I can remember when it was 4.
Yeah, you can go on with that.
Any further discussion or questions for our CAO, our Director of Finance?
Did I miss anything? Yeah.
Okay, continue.
So now I'll go onto the expense side of the budget. Here we start with the category of general government services. This includes council, so the legislative side of the municipality, the administration department of the municipality, public works, and the taxation, anything related to taxation. Before I go into that one though, I do want to say that there was a 2.5% wage increase applied to the budget based on our cost of living policy. So I'm not going to repeat that during every department or every budget, but I do want to mention that before continuing on in general government services, which most of the costs increase there, which is about 5%, is for the professional fees associated with the Recreation Center fundraising campaign. There are, other, minor, other smaller increases, but that's the main bulk of it. Next, we have protective services. So there you would have policing, fire services. That's fairly similar to last year. There is a little bit less actually there, but that's because of those expenses related to the fire department expenditures that aren't happening. Policing did increase like it normally does. So there. It's practically the same. Transportation services, so that would be our municipal roads, sidewalks, street lights. There is a 15% decrease, or roughly about $60,000, and that is because that is where the paving project for the where Island View Park is. That was where those expenses were. So that project is now complete, and there's no similar project this year. So that's why you see a reduction in that line item. Next, we have environmental health, about I can't even understand my writing, $145,000 increase. So there, the reasons for that would be sewer costs are obviously rising. Like a pump for a lift station is almost double what it used to be 4 or 5 years ago. That's where the recycling transportation costs are. So because Queens, if you remember in December, Queens closed their recycling facility in Caledonia. So that required us to change where we bring our recyclables, which increased the cost of our contract. So they're now brought to Yarmouth. Now we're being compensated for that from Circular Materials, which is that revenue I talked about earlier, but we have to, pay more for that transportation as well. So that's where those fees are. The tipping fees at Queens have increased. So we did increase slightly our tipping fees for organics and residuals, just garbage, at Queens landfill, because we're actually bringing more, but it's also costing more per ton. So that's an increase. And then the C&D site operations are slightly higher as well. So we have to bring in more fill, and it's a busy spot. So, the more that you bring in, the more you have to manage and take care of. So that was environmental health. Then we have public health and welfare, almost identical to last year, no change there. Environmental development, so in that grouping, you would have anything related to tourism, planning, economic development, senior services, and those types of services. There is about a 15% increase, about $72,000, and that's due to senior services. The budget was a little higher than last year, and again, senior services is not a department of the municipality. It's kind of a regional initiative, so they're their own society. But we manage their finances and kind of oversee their staff. So that's why it's in our budget. We did extend, or we're proposing, and you discussed extending the season or the hours of the VIC slightly, so more in the shoulder seasons a little bit. So there's an increase there. And then that is where the interest on the loan for the recreation center is put. It's kind of an odd spot according to me, but nonetheless, that's where it needs to be put. So that's where the interest on the loan for the rec center will be. So that's another reason for that increase. And then we have recreation and culture. So that's quite self-explanatory. It includes anything related to the recreation department. So it's programs, facilities, and staffing. And the library is also in there, but that's a much smaller part of that line item. And here is where you will see the biggest increase and the biggest difference from last year. And it's almost solely related to, directly related to the opening of the Recplex, or, the operation of our new recreation center. So there's about a 30% increase, or about $375,000 compared to last year. In there, though, as well, is more investments in our sports fields. So the maintenance of them and the mowing of them. So it's kind of a combination, but for the most part, it's all of the additional, not additional, but the new expenses related to the Recflex opening. Now, as we put a disclaimer during all of our meetings in the presentation of the first draft, is that it's still a little unknown how, what the exact expenses will be of the Recflex until we get open and start seeing how it's used and what the demands are and the needs and wants. I think there's going to be a lot of reviewing to be done there, and ideally next year, after one full year of operations, we'll be able to give you a really good, accurate, and kind of more confident budget on that. But we tried our best with kind of a review of what similar buildings kind of cost to operate. We understand our systems. The engineers that design the buildings can help with that. We tried to estimate as best as we could what type of usage we'll get. So how often, how long we'll need to be open, what kind of coverage for supervising we'll need, all of that. So we tried our best, but that's we're fairly confident, but I'm sure that there will be some tweaks to be made, and next year we'll have a better sense. So that then we have education, which is our one-line education payment to the province, which is 1.872 million, which is 5%, I think, higher than last year, roughly. And then financing, so that's anything related to any of our capital projects or any reserve usage or loans that we need to get. It's all there. And that rounds up our expense side of the budget with a total of $15,382,088, which is identical to the revenues. Any questions on the revenues or the expenses?
Any questions with respect to revenue?
Expenses.
Expenses. Questions, comments? Hearing none, continue.
Thank you very much. So I'll finish with the capital budget. And the capital budget is what, and plan is what funds the purchase, construction of our like infrastructure and our assets and capital equipment. So they often run more than one fiscal year, as you saw with the recreation center, and others like larger projects like a wastewater treatment plant upgrade, or any construction project nowadays often goes longer than a year. So it takes more effort to plan out. You got to most oftentimes design it, and then you have to make sure that the budget and the financial planning of it is a big component. Oftentimes with capital projects, there are different revenue streams, so they can come from our reserves, operating or capital reserves, from grants from the province or the federal government, or fundraising campaigns, I guess that's what kind of is included all in a capital budget. So I've listed the capital projects intended for 26-27. They are there. The title, the project title, which is put there, it sometimes requires more of a description. So if anyone is interested or it's not clear what the project is, they can always ask me, Leah or I, or on the budget highlights document and on our website, there'll be more information as well. But there are some investments in some vehicles for some of our departments, some recreational infrastructure, either repairs or upgrades. So when you're talking about curling ring compressor or arena suction pipe replacement, sounds very specific, but it's an important piece to the puzzle. We have the continuing or the completion of our upgrades at Stony Island Beach. Then we have some repairs to our roof here at the administrative center, sidewalk extension in Barrington Passage, the continuation of the design of the community health center, completion of our rec center. Most of that is around holdbacks and finalizing the payments, and then the completion of our Brass Hill treatment plant, the phase 2 of our upgrades, which are being designed right now. So the total budget, capital budget for this year is $3.2 million. That's what we're presenting. So I'm open to any questions you may have on that. I know you've seen it multiple times in different iterations, but for the public, I think it's important to go through those details and give the high level overview of what the variances are
Mhm.
and all of the required motions for you to make if you are ready to approve the budget are included on the agenda.
Okay, again, for the viewing audience, most of us have been through this around the table, a number of times, the
Mhm.
budget. So, as our CAO had mentioned, so are there any other questions or comments from members of council? Hearing none, so would we move on with the resolution that came out of the committee of the whole then? Is that?
Actually,
or is there a series of?
there is a series of motions, resolutions attached on the agenda. Yeah.
Okay, so what we'll do then is we will move into the list of motions, and Councillor Nicholson, do you want to continue as the one who's reading our motions for tonight? You
Well, I feel better now. I'm still blurred, but I gotta enlarge the writing on this stuff though. Okay, this is resource. Just 1 second. Residential resource and commercial tax rate. This a motion or is that?
So the overall package was recommended by you at the last committee of the whole meeting, but these are like the individual motions that need to be made. So it is a motion, so anyone could make it. It's
Okay,
But
so
it isn't written in the form of it. Do you want?
are you wanting us to go through these, if you don't mind, guys, if you, do you want us to go through these individually then,
Yes.
or do we have a
No,
section of
individually,
motions
yeah.
individually? So
Yeah.
we're basically going back then to residential resource and commercial tax
Right.
rate and all the way down through each one.
Yep, you got it.
Okay, maybe what we'll do then is just go down through them and any member can make a
Yeah.
motion that we adopt the tax rates as has been highlighted in each of those sections. So do we have a mover for the tax rates for the 2026-27? That's the residential tax rate as well as the commercial as well. Do we have a mover for that? Moved by Councillor McKinnon, a seconder.
Second.
Seconded by Deputy Warden Bazinet. Any further discussion on the setting of this year's tax rate? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, nay. The motion has been carried unanimously on the setting of the tax rates. And now we move into the fire area rates. So do we have a mover for the fixing of the fire rates for the 2026-27 tax year?
So moved.
Moved by Deputy Warden Bazinet. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor McKinnon. Any further discussion on this year's fire rates? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, nay. That motion has also been carried unanimously. And now we're into the fire department capital rate. The municipality of Barrington approves fire department capital rate of 0.015 per 100 of assessment. Do we have a mover for this motion? Moved by Councillor Nicholson, seconded. Seconded by Councillor McKinnon. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, nay. That motion has been carried unanimously, and now we're setting the farm acreage tax and for 2026-27, $2.98 per acre for all the lands assessed as exempt farmland. Do we have a mover for this motion? Moved by Councillor Nicholson, seconded.
Second.
Seconded by Deputy Warden Bazinet. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, nay. Motion has been carried unanimously. Sewer services charge. The Council of the Municipality of Barrington approves sewer rates for the 2026-27 fiscal year at $397 for Woods Harbor and Barrington Passage. Do we have a mover for this motion? Moved by Councillor McKinnon, a seconder. Second time a seconder, seconded by Councillor Jekyll. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, nay. The motion on the sewer service charges has been passed unanimously. And now we have various rates and fees for motions. So basically what we have there is a collection of rates and fees that we have well ventilated on in committee of the whole and in our special budget meetings. And so in some sense, we've already approved them. There's no surprises there. So do we have a mover that those various rates and fees would be adopted as they've been presented?
So moved.
Moved by Deputy Warden Bazinet. Do we have a seconder? seconded by Councillor McKinnon. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, nay. The motion has been carried unanimously on the various rates and fees. And now we go into the 2026-27 capital budget. The Council of the Municipality of the District of Barrington approve its 2026-27 capital budget in the amount of $3,156,000. Do we have a mover for this motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Deputy Warden Bazinet moves. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councilor McKinnon. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, nay. That motion has been carried unanimously. And now we're into the operating budget. The Council of the Municipality of the District of Barrington approve its 2026-27 operating budget in the amount of $12,226,088. Do we have a mover for this motion? Moved by Councillor McKinnon. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Deputy Warden Bazinet. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, nay. The motion has been carried unanimously, and now this moves us into the temporary borrowing resolution. Do we need to read the temporary borrowing resolution, or
I don't think so.
we read that? Did we not?
As presented.
As presented. So do we have a mover for the temporary borrowing resolution? Moved by Councillor Nickerson. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor McKinnon. Any further discussion on the temporary borrowing resolution? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, nay. That motion has also been carried unanimously, so that basically ends our motions. Moved and passed, actually all of them unanimously for this year's 2026 municipal budget proceedings. So
And we do have to go to the committee of the whole to do the motion was there.
No,
That's-
that, all
that's
those,
presented. Yeah, I know, but that's it's a second reading. That's how it says it there. Second draft.
all those, but those motion, I mean, you certainly can if you want to, just to
Well, just to
cover
pick it up
everything.
book.
Yeah, you can, if you wanted to, yeah.
As it's recommended from the committee of the whole. Obviously,
But it's redundant, isn't it?
Well, yeah, the motions that you all went through kind of do the same thing, but if you wanted kind of a track of
sure.
that recommendation, you could.
it is redundant in the sense that council has ultimate authority. So the
Y-
decisions that are made
yeah.
here tonight to go back into a committee approval, kind of, right?
Yeah.
It's a lesser authority out of committee than it is out of
Yes.
council. So
Yeah.
they're
In
definitive, the decisions tonight are definitive, are they not?
Yes,
Yes.
And,
So-
I mean, we could put something to the effect that the
Yes.
recommendation kind of was done by the motion, the approval of the motions that you went through
Okay.
there,
Okay.
like for the record, I mean, that works.
Okay, so we'll move on then. If there's any further questions or comments, we'll move on to correspondence. We have a letter to the municipalities regarding legislative amendments, and Deputy Warden Bazinet, I see you have your hand up on this one. Go
I'm
ahead.
wondering, can, Mr. Frotney, can you provide some context for this? I'm not, I mean, it's straightforward, but I guess I'm looking for some historical context that made a letter like this possible, necessary, I guess.
So I don't actually know the kind of the origins of these amendments. They were part of a, what do you call that, an omnibus bill, like a set of amendments to a variety of acts. And this one was sort of in there. It was, I will admit, unexpected on my part. I wasn't aware that there was conversations, being had, but I'm not aware of a lot of conversations. So it's not surprising. I think there has, however, been conversations over the last few months or a couple of years around just the authority of the role of the CAO and council's kind of oversight responsibilities. It's the roles and responsibilities of the CAO, the position, are in the MGA. So from time to time, those things get reviewed and revised based on current, situations or issues. Some of that, especially the last bullet point around introducing mandatory onboarding training. So I know that's been not a priority, but just a concern at the NSFM level of the varying levels of council orientation that happens after an election. So you went one through here, but that's done by us. It's not a provincial kind of course, or that there is one available, but you have to go to the city for it. So if you don't go and you don't get an orientation locally at your own municipality or town, there could be a gap there between that. So I think that's what they're looking to do with the last bullet point, is just to standardize that across the province so that every member of council municipally can kind of start off on the right foot. But yeah, for the first 3 bullets around the changes they made, I don't know the origins
Okay.
of it.
Very good. Thank you.
It almost seems on the surface like some sort of an attempt to delineate roles and authority, especially as it relates to CAO, right? Like, I mean, in terms of what the,
Yeah,
what do you think?
it might just be to clarify too. I mean, again, the role of the CAOs is within the MGA, such as your authority as a council and members of council in the municipality. So they may have just wanted to clarify some of those roles, or include more, or enhance, I guess, your ability to oversee what the CAO does, like council's role and responsibilities in doing that.
Any further questions?
No,
Oh,
please.
Councillor
Yeah.
Otak, go ahead.
No, I think what were they asking for input from the council, so you think we should put it on the next, sometimes in committee of the whole in the near future, and to discuss it more, or? That's what they're asking us to give them our input on that stuff, so on the last paragraph, so I'm not sure what's the wishes of this council. I mean, if you wanna go through it, or you wanna ignore it, it's up to this council. What do you wanna do?
Do I gather from the letter that they're essentially just letting us have information on what's been decided by the province when it comes to tightening up the Municipal Government Act with respect to council's authority? Like, for example, clarify the oversight relationship between councils and chief administrative officers, affirming council's discretion to exclude the CAOs from meetings related to CAO performance. That almost sounds to me like it's not something that we can agree or disagree with, because municipalities are creatures of the province. So the province is essentially proposing to adopt something like that into the MGA, so that councils actually can have that authority to exclude a CAO from a meeting that related to their performance. In other words, if the CAO said, no, I'm not setting out of the meeting, then the MGA actually strengthens the authority of a council to do that.
Yep.
So that the performance evaluation is at arm's length. So if you go on to the next one, you're enabling councils to delegate CAO performance oversight to a committee. So that just basically, they're going to put in the MGA that if we want to, we can actually form a committee to oversee the CAO's evaluation performance, which gives us more arm's length, because we're working with him on a regular basis, and you can sometimes get a more objective evaluation if it's done by people who are, more at arm's length. So I don't think this is anything that we even have the power necessarily to comment on or to engage in. It's because the province essentially has the authority to establish what is or isn't in the Municipal Government Act. Is that correct?
Yeah, so these amendments have already been made. So
Yeah.
the first 3 are in the MGA now.
Yeah.
The last bullet point, which is I think what they're asking your feedback on,
Okay.
is around how to introduce mandatory onboarding training. So what you
Okay.
feel should be included.
Okay.
And for the first 3, there might be some municipalities, there might be a reason specifically for that. Sometimes there's a situation that happens that the province makes changes to legislation to, avoid it from happening again. But in some cases, municipalities or towns may not have a policy or a procedure, a process around evaluating the CAO, or around the CAO's participation in external organizations. So this kind of not protects, but has all of the units in the province sort of following the same in this respect. But in terms of feedback, and they're building, or they're putting together the regulations to establish the minimum standards for mandatory training, and I think that is what they're asking for your.
And so the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, though, as I understand the last paragraph, in the coming months, the
Yeah.
Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities
Yeah.
will be seeking council's input. So really what we're waiting for, this came out from, I think, the Department of Municipal
Yeah.
Affairs, which is a provincial entity.
Mhm.
So what they're doing is tipping us off that the NSFM will be contacting each council in the coming months to get feedback on what councillor orientation or preparation for council should look like. So I think if we sit tight on it, I guess I'm saying all this to say sit tight on it. NSFM is going to get in touch with us and look for our feedback. And who knows, they might send out a survey to all councillors, right? And do it that way, right? We don't know what form that's going to take. So Any other comments or questions about this? Any wishes to do anything different than what's been suggested by the letter itself? That brings us to the last item on the agenda, which is the paving of J-class streets. And essentially, we've been told that nothing's going to happen this year. Typically, what we do is revisit this letter a year from now and rubber stamp it and send it off again. So we can wait until that time comes to decide whether we're going to do that or not, unless somebody has a different suggestion. Hearing no different suggestions, then it's for our information, which brings us to number 8 on the agenda, which is adjournment. I'd like to thank all those who've been in our viewing audience tonight by live stream for joining us, and thank all members for their participation, as well as our 3 very capable staff members who are here tonight to guide us along. We appreciate all those your input and help with it. Good night. Our meeting is adjourned.